Well, hi, everybody. A special bonus edition of Mystery Wire with George Knapp here. I'm Ron Futrell, a bonus Friday edition for you. Oh, it has been a crazy week, a wild week. President's talking disclosure. We've been talking disclosure. George has been talking disclosure for decades and what the government will tell us, won't tell us, why they won't tell us. And we've got a lot to cover, certainly, and it's been a crazy week with that. We're going to hear from George a little bit later in the show. We did a segment purely on disclosure, actually, earlier this year. So we're going to pull some clips from that, and I'll give you some thoughts from George, and talk a little bit about what happened this week. And it started with Barack Obama doing a podcast. Okay, let's go chronologically here. Fun podcast with a political operative. I've not heard of him before, Brian Tyler Cohen, who was talking all sorts of things with Obama. Then, towards the end, he got into this bonus round where he was doing quick, rapid-fire questions to the former president of the United States. And that's when he brought up the issue of aliens. So let's pick that up right here, right now.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Okay, a lot to unpack there. Okay, where are the aliens? And how much was in jest and how much was serious? Obama did walk it back a little bit as the week went on and talked about how he had not seen direct evidence that there were aliens, he hadn't been given that information while he was president. But he also talked about he didn't think there was anything in the underground areas of Area 51. Now, I don't know whether underground was a qualifier in there. A lot of smart political people use certain words in there as qualifiers. George, by the way, and we're going to do an entire episode on this, underground Nevada, coming up later, where he talks about the tunnels that are built, the extensive tunnels built underground at Area 51 and for the Nevada test site at Yucca Mountain that never came to be. But he's, I know because I've researched and looked through a lot of his stuff and found it. So he's going to have a lot to say about that coming up in a future episode that is fascinating to think about what they have built with those tunnels there. So anyway, Obama had to be prompted a little bit with the Area 51 thing, and I get it. He's been out of the White House for a while, not thinking of that sort of stuff. But it is an area where we can go back to and watch our first episode of Mystery Wire with George Knapp, and we go back to 1989 when Bob Lazar came forward and gave the information at Area 51 that he found spacecraft there that were of an alien nature, and broke that news to the world. And since then, of course, it's gone crazy. Since then is a good way to put it. There's been all sorts of things, and then it's hard to separate fact from fiction. Okay. So Barack Obama says that, makes that statement about the aliens. It gets a lot of publicity. It's been in a lot of places, and we wanted it to settle down a little bit before we jumped into it here on Mystery Wire. But then President Trump was asked about it on Air Force One. Peter Doocy from Fox News asked him the question about his reaction to Barack Obama saying there were aliens. And you'll hear at the start, and that's where Obama is accused of by Trump of revealing classified information. And then Doocy says, well, if it's classified, then it's got to be true, right? He sort of intonates that. But, okay, here is Donald Trump on Air Force One being asked these questions to follow up from what Obama said by Peter Doocy.
Something that got a lot of attention this week. Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
The president can declassify anything that he wants to. So if
maybe
you
I'll
want to
get
make
him out
an
of trouble.
announcement,
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
we know.
Okay, so I don't think that's the reason Trump might declassify these. We'll get to his true social statement at some point. But that he then, I mean, his first reaction was, okay, maybe it's classified information. And Peter Doocy goes, well, then if it's classified information, it must be real, right? So what Obama said was real. And then Trump wouldn't really comment on that and take that one step further. And how much presidents know and don't know has been a question George has been asking for years and trying to figure out and find out. Certainly you can imagine that presidents are, some of the information is not given to the president of the United States for whatever reason you could think of, that they don't want them to know, they don't think they should know, there's more important things for them to know. I don't know what would be more important than this, but that the people in the various programs, but there have been government programs. We're going to find later in the show, and when we hear from George, there have been government programs looking extensively at this issue for years, and they have found stuff. So what hopefully will happen is that it will all be disclosed at some point. So this is our special disclosure edition from presidents of the United States, a former and a current president. We're going to get to Trump's statement in the next segment, and then a little bit later we will hear from George as Mystery Wire with George Knapp special bonus edition continues. Okay, glad to have you back here on a special bonus edition of Mystery Wire with George Knapp. I'm Ron Futrell. You've heard from the two presidents going back and forth. Okay, let me say this for a little bit. It was nice that they weren't really arguing over anything. This is they were going back and forth on an alien issue, which was sort of nice to see. Okay, so with all politics aside, and I'd like to think on this issue, all politics would be pushed aside, and we would just get disclosure at some point, somewhere, sometime. Okay, so President Trump then, in light of what Obama said, then what he said on the plane, he then sends out a Truth Social, his social media platform. I'll read from it here. Based on the tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process, I think that's a key phrase in there, begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, identified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any other and all information connected to these highly controversial but extremely interesting and important matters. God bless America. Okay, so whoa, when that came out was, okay, now the president's saying everything's going to be released. He's going to put it all out there and let it fall where it may. I'm going to play the cynic here, okay, and go, I don't know. And I think George, and my text back and forth with him this week and chatting with him a little bit about it, and I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm going to say he's going to be more cynical even than I am about all of this stuff finally coming out, because he's seen it for decades. He's been on this mission for decades and had promises and heard people saying they were going to, and then nothing comes of it. So my feelings are, and my personal feelings are, yes, that I'll believe it when I see it, type of thing. And I believe George feels the same way, and knowing him closely and everything he feels. But it isn't. But okay, I'll put another caveat in here. You never know with Trump. I mean, he may just do it. Things that we have been, look back over the past, JFK files, forever. The MLK files, Robert Kennedy files, when Bobby Kennedy was shot in Los Angeles by Sirhan Sirhan back in '68. And by the way, I'm old enough to have remembered a lot of that stuff pretty well back as a kid at the time, and remember these. But anyway, and some of the stuff has come out. Some of it's been disappointing. Some of it has had so many redactions that it's not even close to being informative. But I think there has been a tendency towards more disclosure. Now, on this, there clearly are, and we're going to hear from George later in segment 3 of this special edition, government programs for years dealing with this. Okay, they have found stuff. There's people that have come to us and told us what they've seen, what they found, that they have seen aircraft of an unknown nature, that they have seen bodies of an unknown alien nature, that they have materials of an unknown nature and stuff that we're not capable of doing. There have been people that have come forward and said this for decades, and none of that stuff has been confirmed by government officials on a high level, at the presidential level. We'll see if this happens. This will be interesting to see if it does take place. But again, I'm going to play the cynic on this. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from George Knapp talking about, first of all, the disclosure, how this is the year of disclosure because there was a documentary on it, and there's an upcoming movie called Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg to come out. And George talks about the program, what we could possibly find in some of these files if Donald Trump holds true to what he said in that text that he is going to disclose and put out the information. So we'll talk about that, hear from George when we return here to Mystery Wire with George Knapp. Okay, here we go. Mystery Wire with George Knapp. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Ron Futrell. And now we've heard from the two presidents, get their thoughts on this thing, going back and forth on it. And I don't know, it might be one of the issues that everybody can agree on in Washington, D.C. Everybody says it, at least. They say the right things. Oh, yeah, they want full disclosure. Oh, yeah, they want everything to be out there to the public because they are public servants. So they say the right thing on this. But when it comes down to it, not much happens in the end. We'll see if that is the case once again. Hopefully it is not. Hopefully they do come through with that. But this has been the year of disclosure, and we did an earlier episode here on Mystery Wire where we talked about disclosure. And Dan Farah did the documentary called The Age of Disclosure, which had a lot of people in there that George has interviewed over the years on many of these issues. Lou Elizondo, most notably in there. George has been interviewing him for about 10 years, maybe longer, on some of these issues when he first came out and talked about the government programs that were involved in this area. Dave Fravor, who's a pilot who had seen some UAPs, UFOs, and had spoken out about it. So we've had all this information come out here, and you can see it in the doc. It's very well done. But George, by the way, on a personal note, George should have been in that doc, my opinion. But I think he mainly wanted to talk to people who had personal experiences. And George, as a reporter, has just been somebody who has gathered all the info. He has been the source for gathering all the information and then distributing it out there and having a keen sense to know what's real and what's not. And I admire that certainly in George, is that he's able to do that. And that's not easy because he's thrown I see this stuff. He has thrown a lot of stuff from a lot of places, as you can imagine, and he has to decipher it and figure out what is real and what isn't, and so that you can trust him, which he's had a very good track record on being able to do that, certainly over the years. And remember the Russian documents. We have an episode on that where he brought the Russian documents out that he obtained in the mid-'90s when he went on a couple of trips there and brought those documents out and talking about the Russians and their disclosure of UFOs and documents. So that being said, let's go now to George talking about these two movies from late last year and one coming up later this summer that deals with this issue of the word of the show, disclosure.
We've both seen Age of Disclosure. I thought it was a terrific documentary. It has all these different national security people, including Lou and Jay Stratton and others, speaking almost with one voice to say, hey, this is real. We've had secret programs. It's a national security issue. We need to take it seriously and get off the dime. It's a very powerful production. What it will do, will it move the ball down the field? Well, we have to wait and see. As for Disclosure Day, the Spielberg movie, look, anytime Steven Spielberg does a UFO movie, I'm there. Close Encounters is one of my top 5 films of all time, and he does have seemingly some inside information. I can't wait to see it.
I'll join George in that. I can't wait to see it either. When Spielberg comes with something, he certainly does it well. We know that, number one. But it's also going to be revealing. And if he knows something, has some information, the timing on all of this is incredible. Okay, that all of this is coming together right here, right now, and we're having this discussion and talking disclosure. Now, over the years, the government has had numerous programs, and they're long acronyms, usually ATIP, OSAP, and George's, and NIDS. We just had the anniversary of the National Institute of Discovery Science, which dealt with a lot of the paranormal stuff, and we've done an episode on that. But now let's hear from George on what possibly could be uncovered, what he knows about what we've seen, what he has seen, and others who have talked to him have seen with some of these government programs and what they've uncovered to this point.
The ones that we know about, OSAP and ATIP and the UAP task force, they're gone. But the official clearance house for all things UFO is ARROW, which is really sort of a counterintelligence, disinformation, don't worry, folks, move along, nothing to see here operation, as opposed to really doing some investigations. There is something else that was just recently launched. And then there are programs around the bodies in the craft. UFO crashes are real. They have happened. We have that stuff stashed away in different places. Craft, parts, materials, bodies. And those are part of a program that's trying to figure out how to essentially weaponize, recreate it, reverse engineer it. That's ongoing. It's been ongoing for a long time, yes.
Have they ever asked you to work for the government? Now and would you, if they came to you and said, George, we want you to come here and help us out with something. Explain to us what this is.
I've been asked twice.
And?
I said no.
You said no, but okay.
I said no. I didn't want to get a security clearance because I knew for sure that I could never report it. Me not having a clearance, I still learn little tidbits about these secret programs, and I can report them. If I were to join the programs, I'd know a lot more, but I couldn't say any of it in public.
Okay, there you have it. Crafts, parts, materials, bodies is what our government has found and what George has found through talking to many of these people who work with these government programs. So I'm going to join George in this battle cry and saying, okay, let's do it. Donald Trump, stick to your word here and disclose the information that you've got that is out there that we know you have, the government has, and these programs have. Don't want to hear at some point somebody backing up and going, whoa, wait, no, we can't. And hear a bunch of redactions, and the documents end up looking like this. With nothing there except for a bunch of black check marks and things that you can't see, that nobody knows whether it's real or not or believable. But we're at a point right now, this seems to be a bit of a tipping point on whether we're going to get to this area where the government's going to be honest. George he spoke to Congress. Many of you will remember this. We've shown parts of it here. Back in October of last year, he testified before Congress and talked about the disclosure. He talked about the Russian documents and talked about the idea that he wants government to be more transparent. We would all love government to be more transparent on a lot of things. But on these things, yes, would be critical. In my conversations with George and talking about the reasons to not reveal this stuff, national security, you don't want China, Russia, worldwide opponents, so to speak, to know what you have and what you don't have. So there's going to be that issue that's going to come up, that some of the stuff is going to be redacted for national security. That's legitimate. That's a reason that needs to be done. Another reason, and I don't accept this reason, George doesn't either, I'm going to speak for him a little bit because I've had enough conversations with him about this, is that it shouldn't be disclosed because we couldn't handle it. BS. We can handle it, okay? We can handle a lot of stuff. We've been through a lot of stuff in this country over the last few years. We can handle that stuff, and the world can handle it, knowing right now. Could we have handled it in the 60s or 70s? Maybe not. I was around then. I know what it was like. That might have been War of the Worlds scared the hell out of people back in the day, okay, when it happened. Just a radio broadcast talking about aliens landing, okay, and was all fake, was fun, very creative, interesting, but it frightened people. I think we're in a whole different area right now where we can handle what the government can put out, to put it out there, disclose it, let us know. Now you've got Obama confirming to some degree, although he walked it back on the aliens during that podcast that woke everything up. Trump then saying that he is going to disclose it. He didn't put a time frame on that. That was interesting. I would have liked to seen a time frame on that because it can easily get delayed and held up. And we're waiting to hear from these agencies. We're waiting to hear. But somebody needs to go to the president that's worked on these programs and brief him on exactly what we have and then release it. That should be a simple process. I know nothing is simple in Washington, D.C., but that could happen, and that should happen certainly right now. We would all like to see it happen here at Mystery Wire. We'd love to see it, and we'll be a vehicle for that disclosure when it indeed does happen. But thanks for watching this special bonus edition of Mystery Wire. I'm Ron Futrell for George Knapp. Have a good one, everybody.